Today in Williamsburg, people identifying as white make up about 57.5% of this area's residents. By contrast, although long rooted in this area, Hispanic populations are now moving out. Their numbers are decreasing, and now they make up about 30% of the population. To get a better idea of the changes in the community, we're heading to Los Suras, aka South Williamsburg, and making a stop at Eddie Jr.'s, established in the mid-'80s. This is just one of the many bars where for decades salsa music and dancing could be found nightly. We'll meet Carmela Muzio, a sociologist who studies Puerto Rican life in Williamsburg and is also, it just so happens, an expert salsa dancer. She offers great insight into this place and promises to teach us some salsa moves to end our night.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, how are you?
How's it going?
So nice to meet you.
Welcome to Southside Williamsburg.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. Well,
thank you so much.
Thanks
tell
for
us a
coming.
little bit about salsa in Williamsburg. How long has Eddie Jr.'s been here?
Eddie Jr.'s has been here for longer than I've been alive, for sure. And it's not actually a salsa bar, but they do play some excellent salsa music inside. The main thing about Eddie's that makes it stand out is it's one of the last places of its kind that caters to locals and caters to the local Puerto Rican community.
So right now in this larger neighborhood, what is the current Puerto Rican bar scene look like?
Right now in this neighborhood, there's a couple of cultural institution places like here. There's one stronghold Puerto Rican social club that's still left running. That's a really old school spot. And there are a few, especially as you go into East Williamsburg, there are a few Puerto Rican bars. There's Latin music playing, right? And there are newer Latin spots that have maybe salsa night, maybe Cuban food, things like that, which is great. But Williamsburg, despite having this strong history and ongoing cultural vibrancy, is in a very advanced stage of gentrification. I'm a sociologist, and although I have done some work on gentrification in Williamsburg, I'm currently studying salsa dancers in New York. I started doing the research after I was already a dancer, so it was something I was really passionate about. And then I started to look at it and see that there was a lot going on here, right?
Did she wear the right shoes?
Are those going to be okay for her?
Did she wear the right shoes? She can
I
sauce
feel
on
like
those,
we
right?
can make
She's
that
a little
work.
worried about it.
Listen, it's not your shoes
It's
that's
not
gonna
the
make
shoes,
it happen.
okay? So no excuses.
So if you could talk a little bit about the history here that you started to get into, but in particular the sort of history with the Puerto Rican community.
With nightlife, I mean, if you would notice, this is a little bit away from maybe like the main track of nightclubs and really trendy spots, cool bars, and all that, which has taken off in Williamsburg. And all of that is really interesting, not to knock it, but Eddie's is a little bit more a part of an older tradition, a more local tradition. And the main thing that I would say about it is that when I first started researching Williamsburg, even as an undergraduate, the news stories and the things that I could find in media, looking at the way that the neighborhood is portrayed, didn't resonate at all with my life or the lives of my friends that were living here. It was like I was reading about a different world, which in a lot of ways I was. So the South Side has a really deep history, a really political history, and a strong history of community organizing, of like a cultural vibrancy that was cultivated here intentionally. So there was a large group of Puerto Rican migration in the 1920s, an even bigger wave post-World War II, industrialization, right? And that went all the way up to the 1990s. In that time period, from maybe the mid-1950s up through the 1990s, this neighborhood began a huge wave of changes, right? So starting in the mid-1960s, this neighborhood was abandoned in a lot of ways by the city, disinvested, right? No public services. We're talking about bad housing conditions. This area had almost as many burned out buildings and lots as the South Bronx, which is famous at that time for the Bronx's burning, right? 1977. So Southside Williamsburg, Bushwick in general, all of Community District 1, which includes Breed Point and Williamsburg, had a huge issue with that, right? Arson, lack of services, poor educational facilities. And in the 1970s and the 1980s, community groups came together and organized around that. They took over buildings, they found people to fill the vacancies, they built really strong cultural institutions and organizations that are still here, like El Puente, Los Sures. In a way, that really laid the foundation for big money interests to come in, real estate to come in. So you had, yes, a small artist community coming in the 1980s, all the way by the river, some of the empty buildings. But what really took off is in the early 1990s when real estate interests started to see that this was an area with great transportation, very accessible, a lot of space, a lot of loft space. They jumped into this, right? And it's not, people talk about gentrification as though it's just sort of something that happens, right? The same way that segregation was talked about in a lot of ways. Oh, well, people just like to live where they do, but it's not. It's not just an accidental process where people move to other places. It's very intentional because there's a lot of profit to be made here. My dance company is inside, and they're actually the oldest salsa dance company in New York. And they're called Santo Rico, which is for Santo Domingo and Puerto Rico. I mean, you walk in, you take your first class, and it just captures you. I mean, it's a beautiful dance. Beautiful to share that with a partner, right? I love partner dancing. Beautiful movement, beautiful music. Also from New York, right? Salsa as we know it birthed in El Barrio, the Bronx, Brooklyn. Also New Yorican, Puerto Rican neighborhoods.
How would you connect, if at all, drinking and dancing?
That's an interesting question. I find that dancers in the salsa scene hardly drink. We spin a lot.
Figure out how you're going to spin, either through drinking or through dancing.
Right, exactly. And actually, for that reason,
well, as the guy, does he think are the guys drinking or just the girls not drinking? Because the girls are getting spun, right?
Yeah.
So I can see how that could be a little difficult.
Yeah, but you guys, men lead, women follow. It's the #1 rule.
Fair enough.
Just in this one thing. Right? Okay, don't
No,
get
you said
carried away with that.
Men lead. Can you say it?
I heard just in this
Oh,
one.
stop. Okay, when it comes to salsa, men lead and women follow.
You drink a lot and you knock me down, I'm gonna go over to my friends and say, don't dance with him, he's terrible.